It's been an amazing ride. So we're 1 week in. Last Tuesday, we were having the election. What's going to happen? We were told it was going to be just a super close race. And that is not what happened. And we're going to cover a bunch of that stuff today. Main story here is NBC hemorrhaging viewers since Election Day, sheds more than half of its primetime audience. But the real story is just the reaction in the mainstream media to what happened. We're going to cover a bunch of those stories as well. We've got a smorgasbord of stuff to cover. But what I want you to focus on here first is look at the numbers that they're calling this the election of the podcast. And thank you for tuning into this one. So normally, we'll have a bunch of people on this live stream. Normally those people would have, 20 years ago would have been tuning into Oprah or something, right? But now you come to different news sources or different entertainment. What we're looking at right here is this is the Joe Rogan experience. I just want to put these numbers kind of into perspective, and then we'll read our main article, and then we've got some great video. I've got some just funny videos, some white dudes for Harris. Oh, it's tasty. So Joe Rogan experience. Donald Trump went on that, episode number 2219. 49 million views. Okay. That's October 25th. So a couple of weeks ago. That's the first podcast. Podcast number 2 with JD Vance, the vice president. He got 16 million views. So call that 66 million views. 66 million views. All right. Here is Kamala Harris's number 1 podcast that she went on. It's called Call Her Daddy. And Kamala Harris didn't go on the Joe Rogan show. Rogan tried to get her on there, but she basically said, we're only doing 1 hour and you have to come to me. And Joe Rogan basically said, no, 3 hours and you come to Austin. That's how we're doing it. He left the door open for her to make that happen. She was too busy. Instead, she went on on Call Her Daddy. And this set right here, cost her $100,000 in a hotel room. They built this on the spot because Kamala Harris couldn't get her ass to go to her studio. I mean, just not getting it, right? And for her efforts, Kamala Harris got 859,000 views, not even 1 million views. The number 1 comment on this is not hitting 1 million views with a presidential candidate is wild. That got 2,000 views. 100,000 for this and got less than 1 million hits. Those Harris campaign advisors are brilliant. I mean, and it just goes on and on and on. It's mind blowing that that's what Kamala Harris came up with. And there is no real podcast with Tampon Tim. Just didn't really happen. Here's Club Shay Shay, the number 2 podcast Kamala Harris went on. It's got 1.6 million views there. All right. So, call it less than 3 million views. And we're looking at Trump and we're looking at JD Vance at, 66 million views. People aren't tuning into MSNBC. And they're especially not turning into MSNBC since Election Day because it's been such an absolute rout. MSNBC's reliably liberal audience has tuned out the anti-Trump network. They dropped 54% in primetime viewership. I mean, the numbers are staggering. MSNBC averaged 1.1 million viewers, 1.1 million viewers per show throughout the whole month is only is that, what is that? Do they run, their main show Monday through Friday, something like that? I mean, you're not even talking 30 million views. And that's with Rogan doing 1 simple podcast. And the numbers just get worse. MSNBC is down 16% among total day viewers. And Fox has just basically gone to the moon. Because everybody's tuning in, because everybody realizes, Yeah, this didn't, nobody's really paying attention to what the liberals are having to say. It's this, they've tuned out. As its poor post-election night ratings show, MSNBC should not expect a Trump bump this time around. So what happened last time is like CNN and MSNBC, they got this massive bump because all of a sudden we're going to make fun of Orange Man bad. That's not the direction this is going, though. It's not the direction it's going. Even liberals are rejecting its condescending tone and the divisive rhetoric of its new standard bearer, Joy Reid. Oh, man. How about The View? How is The View even a thing? We're talking about that in this morning's premiere. It's just like, what are you even doing? Here's one of the liberals. If you're like me, you haven't turned on the news since last Tuesday when Donald Trump won the election. Personally, I can't bear to listen to another minute of wisdom from Joy Reid, my friend Lawrence O'Donnell, or the admirable Rachel Maddow. Is she still on the air, Rachel Maddow? I feel like everybody has left. Chris Wallace has left. Michael Wallace, remember from 60 Minutes? Michael Wallace's son is 77. He's leaving CNN because he wants to go do a podcast. Shocking, right? Shocking. All right, let's get into some of this other good stuff. You can tell what direction we're going here, right? Oh, man. Okay, this is the White Dudes for Harris, right? Here we go.
Good morning. It is November 7th, Thursday, and got my lipstick on today, so I'm a little bit more together. We're putting a plan together. I cannot live in a country that voted for Trump. I cannot spend another 4 years under that man. And so we have made the decision that we are leaving. We're putting a plan together. Our plan is to go back to Australia. And by back, that is where obviously Tam and our daughter Jordan was from. I'm working on immigration paperwork for spousal visa. I'll probably end up going over on a tourist visa initially because the spousal visa takes a while. I'll probably have to leave at some point and go to like Vietnam or Maria, and then come back to Australia, waiting for the paperwork to go through. But we're getting quotes on selling the house. We're getting ready. I'm getting quotes on moving boxes to Australia. We're getting quotes on moving our dog and cat to Australia. And we are in the process of selling everything. I'm hoping to be out of here by mid-January. So that's the news. We've buckled up. We've made a decision. We are not spending any more time in America under Donald Trump. There's just no way.
Well, I'm sure Australia is looking forward to having you. And here is Donald Trump's response to the white dudes of White Dudes for Kamala Harris, right? Here we go.
There's a group called White Dudes for Harris. Have you seen this? White Dudes for Harris. Anybody know? Are some of you here? White Dudes for Harris doesn't sound like it. But I'm not worried about them at all because their wives and their wives' lovers are all voting for me. Every one of those people are voting for me.
He is probably
White Dudes for Harris.
Just saying that. No, this was at the Al Smith dinner. So this wasn't out of context. I mean, this wasn't a stretch. You can kind of say whatever you want at that dinner and anything goes. But here's a guy coming out and saying, yeah, you might have all that ridiculous nonsense, but not only your wife, but the dude banging your wife, because you're not much of a man, are voting for Trump. They're voting for the Trumpster, right? Here is Jon Stewart absolutely melting down.
Turns out that people knocking on other people's doors doesn't get them to do what you want them to do. As I believe vacuum and Bible salesmen probably have known for many, many centuries. Me. I was wrong. Will continue to be wrong.
Okay. I mean, it's, you know, you'd say it's comical, but it's not comical because they actually thought with their campaign that they had a shot to win. I mean, it's just absolutely mind-blowing that this was their reality. And yet a lot of us have been watching this for years, looking over going, what in the F are those guys doing? Defund the police, trans rights for all. I mean, just some insane stuff. Let's get rid of the borders. Let's just open the borders up. This is going to be great. It's a, huge party. Just all of these policies and ridiculousness that we've had shoved down our throat, and particularly shoved down our throat by mainstream media. That's one of the reasons I started this podcast, was a huge FU to the establishment, because there's so many stories. And, CNN rolls out a story and you're like, are you kidding me? That's how you address it? This stuff shouldn't be happening. You shouldn't have 10 stabbings in Seattle in 2 different incidents, probably by the same guy. That happened this weekend. He stabbed 10 of them, and then he came back with another 10 or 5 stabbings. He left one dude with a broken off knife in his back. I was texting with Jeremy Harris, and I'm like, hey, man, how you doing after that stabbing incident? He's like, yeah, it was kind of gruesome, but that's not the worst I've seen. Now, you know what I mean? It's like Washington State and Oregon State just go more blue with their voting, more blue. Let's just really hammer down on this. Things are going to be great. This is going to be excellent. All right. And then we've got a new governor. Don't even get me started. We got Bob Ferguson, Turd Ferguson. All right. Let's watch this video. This is a pretty funny one as well.
If you're the Democrats, what are you going to do for the next 2 years?
CNN.
How do you regroup?
Therapy. We're all going to therapy. I don't know why are we here? There's nothing. If you're a Democrat, all we can say is we hope that Susie decides that she's going to take a long vacation, that they hire some terrible people and make some mistakes to give us a chance. Right now, they have everything. They got the Supreme Court. They got the Electoral College. They got the House. They got the Senate. They got the popular vote. And we're just sitting here with the dunce cap on. Last week, we thought we were the smartest people in the world. We thought Donald Trump was an idiot. We thought his campaign made no sense. And it turned out they were smarter than us. And we don't have anything to say. I can sit here and pretend I know something. Here's what I know. Everybody I know is miserable. Everybody's on these Zoom calls. Nobody's got any good ideas. And it's going to take us a while to figure this out. I'm not good at coming in here and faking and pretending no, we got whooped.
Van, you're gonna go to the spa. You need a massage and a cucumber water, buddy.
I agree. And a cookie.
That's right.
All right.
And a participation ribbon. I voted. Right? I mean, at least somebody is taking an honest approach. Man, we got smoked. We got absolutely thrashed in this event. All right. Let's see what, this video here, this is not going to age well. Check this out. We're talking about that Iowa poll, right? The Des Moines Register poll that showed Trump down by 3 points, Kamala Harris up by 3 points in Iowa. And it was like a day before the election. Everybody's like, look at this poll. Well, you got this GOP strategist, former, and he's talking about it. Let's see what he has to say. Let's see what geniusness he brings to the equation.
I have not talked to anyone. We have not talked, and kind of the panel seems to agree that we can't really find anyone that actually thinks that Harris is going to win Iowa. Now, maybe Ann will turn out to be correct, but if it's true that Trump is going to win there, how do you explain what she's finding?
Well, listen, again, let's just say she's half right. She's been the most reliable pollster that I've ever worked with in my career, and I've worked with a lot of them. So if directionally she's right, and Trump just wins Iowa by a lot less than we thought he was going to, that just has huge consequences for the actual swing states. So again, I think if Seltzer's half right about Iowa, I think Harris could win all 7 swing states. So I'll just say it now. I know you're not in the prediction business, but I'm getting in it. Harris is going to blow the doors off. And it's going to be because of women and the granny gap.
So this is our last Monday together before the election. Obviously, we'll hopefully be talking next, a week from today, and we'll have a lot more information. But what's your final prediction here? You gave us a little bit of that, but distilled, who do you think wins and when do we know?
Listen, I think that we have overcomplicated this by a lot. I think this is the first post-Dobbs election. I think there are more women in America. I think more women are going to vote. There's an enthusiasm gap that's like 10 points. We got the granny gap now. Add that all up as simple math. Harris blows the doors off and wins big.
All right. You heard it here first. Mark McKinnon, thank you very much. Good luck the next 24 hours. See you.
That, my friends, is out there on the interweb forever. Want to have that out there forever? Hey, what was your prediction on CNN for the election? I think Harris with a massive blowout. Man, they couldn't have been more wrong, could they? They couldn't have been more wrong. And that's something that I've been thinking about a lot is, all right, so the polls wildly off. How badly was this just skewed on purpose? On absolute purpose. I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but you know, what we were told is this story of, oh, it's going to be so close. It's going to be now so close. It's going to be so close. It's going to be within inches. It's going to take us forever to count all the votes. And yet, what did Vegas say? What were the, granny gap? What is the I don't even want to go there, right? Let's just leave granny alone. Granny gap. It's mind blowing. But this whole notion of this is going to be so close and that's what shoved down our throats. And yet Vegas had the odds in Trump's favor consistently from the get go. And as the election wore on, those odds just went to the moon. I had my son Kieran here during the live stream and he was checking up on those odds. I mean, it just well before the races were called. That was coming down. And interesting, Kamala Harris just basically cut short her speech at Howard University. Yeah, we're going to come back tomorrow. She knew then. There's a story that Joe Rogan was talking to Dana White of UFC fame. And Dana White says, apparently Elon Musk built himself a little app. And at like 10:30 East Coast time, he said, yep, Trump's won in a landslide. I'm out of here. And Elon just books it out. He just leaves. He's not sticking around. He's got his app and he knew that Trump won in a landslide. And the rest of us are like, who's going to win? Because they've told us this is going to be so close. This is going to be so close. What's going to happen? And it just didn't go that way, did it? Now, here is these guys were some of the Obama's senior advisors during his presidency. Their roles range from senior speechwriters to national security spokesmen. Listen to their thoughts on Biden. Here we go.
Joe Biden's decision to run for president again was a catastrophic mistake. It just was. And he and his inner circle, they refused to believe the polls. They refused to believe he was unpopular. They refused to acknowledge until very late that anyone could be upset about inflation. And they just kept telling us that his presidency was historic and it was the greatest economy ever. We just heard him again say that it's the greatest economy ever. Clearly, 70-80% of voters don't believe that. They don't believe that about their own personal financial.
In polar opposite, in fact, you're telling me one thing, Karine Jean-Pierre is telling me one thing, and I'm like, well, that's not what I'm podcasting on a daily basis. So this massive disconnect is resulting in mainstream media just losing absolute credibility because they don't have any, and they haven't had any for a long time. Now, will the Democrats wake up? Will the liberals wake up and go, oh, yeah, they're feeding us a line of crap? Probably not. Because even a broken clock is right twice a day, right? I mean,
situation, but they just keep telling us that. And then after the debate, the Biden people told us that the polls were fine. And Biden was still the strongest candidate. They were privately telling reporters at the time that Kamala Harris couldn't win. So they were shivving Kamala Harris to reporters while they told everyone else, not a time for an open process and his vice president can't win. So he's the strongest candidate. Then we find out when the Biden campaign becomes the Harris campaign that the Biden campaign's own internal polling at the time when they were telling us he was the strongest candidate showed that Donald Trump was going to win 400 electoral votes. That's what their own internal polling said.
There were polls showing 80% of voters thought Joe Biden was too old to get a second term before the debate. And then we all watched the debate. And then in the last few weeks, Biden was campaigning and he said, we need to lock Trump up. He created a controversy over whether Trump supporters were garbage. He said, the weird thing about slapping Trump on the ass. Like his moments on the campaign trail weren't flawless either.
You cannot.
It's absurd.
It's absurd. I'm trying to be generous here.
I'm not. I'm done being generous.
I want to stay for the record. I also think all the TV money ads should be.
Those should be rethought too.
More importantly, the idea that Joe Biden was going to do better in this race than Kamala Harris is on its face absurd.
400 electoral votes. 400 is what Kamala Harris came up with in their polls. Hey, our main guy here, Joe, Nancy Pelosi, it's not looking good. It's looking like Trumper is going to get 400 electoral votes. That's just what we're coming up with internally. And you know, Nancy Pelosi she enacted, just yanked him. She went down that road, and she is now saying, well, we would have done better if Joe was polled earlier. I don't think so. There's no way. You still got the same candidate. You give her another month or two. Okay. But this was a runaway, election to be, as it ended up. There was no way. We just needed a little bit more preparation and we could have got this right. I don't think so, folks. This was a massive, massive blowout. Let's keep going. Oops.
Kamala Harris ran basically a flawless campaign.
I think because she ran an incredible campaign, it's been very telling about who we are, because her campaign did focus on the threat to democracy.
She ran a flawless campaign, and I maintain that.
I cannot use her failed run in 2019 and hold it against her after watching this incredible campaign she's run now.
This really was an historic, flawlessly run campaign. Queen Latifah never endorses anyone.
She did this time.
Okay. Listen to them. It's absolutely mind-blowing that they're thinking she ran a flawless campaign and she's on Call Her Daddy. I'm not taking anything away from Call Her Daddy, the podcast, but she couldn't even make it to the Joe Rogan podcast. Make this make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. It's just so wildly bizarre. Veteran broadcaster Chris Wallace is leaving CNN after less than 3 years at the network. Let's get down to the good stuff. He's offered a contract extension. He said, no, the 77-year-old, I think my dad is 78. 77-year-old told the Daily, no, I can't be because I'm 56. So my dad's probably closer to 80. 77-year-old told the Daily Beast he wants to go into streaming or podcasting. So these are legacy veterans. I mean, how many years has this guy right here had under his belt in mainstream media? And then all of a sudden he's like, I want to be a podcaster, because that's where the views are. People are no longer turning in to this other just absolute ridiculousness that is, after this fantastic campaign. And does CNBC, do they get do all of these pundits get the same damn cover sheet of, all right, you got to say this, it's flawless. Because every single time you hear them start to describe from multiple news outlets, they describe she's run a flawless campaign. You heard it there. I mean, it's like they just send out a memo. All right, you guys got to all say this. And then the rest of America, including you guys tuning into, some random podcast here on the West Coast, not Best Coast, coming to you from behind enemy lines in Seattle, Washington, where we just vote blue, blue, blue and expect it to get better. Not the definition of crazy or anything, but hey. And here are some of the media post-mortems. This was another Fox. How could an entire left liberal worldview be more comprehensively dismantled by reality? And yet the primary response among my liberal friends was to rage at the electorate. Those guys, they're all fascists. They're all sexist, fascists. They hate women. They hate black people. And then you're like, yeah, but the Latinos voted in massive numbers for Trump. Women voted more for Trump. All of, the demographics incrementally voted more for Trump. So you can't really say that, right? They texted me to insist that Harris lost because of white people, white women in particular. All right. So all you white chicks out there, this is your fault. And you're saying, I know, I voted for Trump. I mean, it's not that hard, right? So we've got David Brooks. There will be some on the left who say Trump won because of the inherent racism, sexism, and authoritarianism of the American people. Apparently, those people love losing, and they want to do it again and again and again. because they're blaming something that they need to take a look at internally. Because Trump ran an amazing campaign. He's got that woman that he just, put to chief of staff. He was on the trail. He was humping, right? He was just out there, boom, going, out there, boom, going. He made time, and he was late for his, Minnesota or Michigan campaign stop because he spent 3 hours with Joe Rogan. He knew where to put his emphasis, and he spent $300 million in ads. Kamala Harris spent $1 billion, and she's $20 million in the hole, and she's still asking for money. She's asking for money. She's asking for donors. So here's Politico. How can Harris's defenders grumble about being dragged down by Biden when she could not find one substantive policy issue on which to break from the unpopular incumbent? She waited 3 months, blurted out on The View that she couldn't think of any difference with Biden. She had nothing. Nobody wanted to listen to her on her podcast. Nobody in America wanted to listen to her. The numbers don't lie. We ran through that. They want to listen to Trump, though, and they want to listen to J.D. Vance. So I kind of wonder what would Kamala Harris have gotten if she would have gone on Rogan? How many views would she have gotten? Would you have tuned in? I would have tuned in for a split second, but you just know you're going to get that word salad, that word soup, right? What is she talking about? And Joe Rogan would have spent most of his podcast trying to reel her back to some sense of, hey, what are we discussing here? And Joe Rogan even talked about, I just want to get to know her. I just want to get some kind of information about her, about what type of person she is. Because we don't have anything. Even after her campaign, we've got the big goose egg. We don't know. And that's what the American people said, is we don't know. And this whole thing of, abortions and trans rights and all that, identity politics. Yeah, we're not playing that game. Boop, Trump. Simple as that, right? The National Review. She was a lousy candidate with an even lousier message, if you can call it that. The only thing she had to do was sell herself, and she couldn't imagine even this fundamental task. She couldn't do it. But you know what? She was meant to be the vice president. She was meant to be something that ticked a box on Joe Biden's an old white dude. We need to get this demographic to vote for him. Kind of like Kamala Harris on her presidential thing picked Tim Walz. Tamp on Tim. The guy is so unelectable. He is just wildly unelectable. J.D. Vance, maybe you don't like him. Maybe you like him. I like him. I read his book. He railed on Trump. He railed on Trumpsters. All right. Trump said, hey, all right. Trump's got that ability to bring in folks that maybe don't necessarily agree with him, and he'll give them a shot, and they're gonna, cave to him. Otherwise, they're going to be out, because that's just how this goes. Right. So, I think we've got a couple more things down. We've got Tom Homan. He was the ICE director in Trump's first term, and he's coming back, and a lot of people are excited because he's basically saying, hey, we're going to deport just, tons and tons of people. I don't think that happens, but Homan is a no-nonsense kind of guy, and I think he does drop the hammer on a lot of the absolute ridiculousness that has been at the southern border. We've just had some absolute silliness, right? CNN's Brian Stelter may have put it best. Trump's return to power raises serious questions about the media's credibility. Yeah. And that's what the rest of us are saying. Hey, I found you you guys let me know all the time. Hey, I found you on this podcast. What are you doing, man? What are you doing in Seattle? Well, somebody's got to do the Lord's work behind enemy lines, and that's what we're doing. We're actually coming out with a merch line. Whomever gave me the idea of make America reasonable again, let me know. If you were that person, let me know. I'll send you some merch. I will. Make America reasonable again. And we're going to mock it up just like Trump stuff and put it out there, because that's the bottom line. There just isn't enough reasonableness in what's going on. This stuff is just absolutely It's crazy. On MSNBC, which some conservative critics have called MSDNC for its promotion of things Democrat, Joy Reid blamed white women for Kamala Harris's loss in North Carolina. White women, again, this is your fault. You guys blew it. CNN commentator Van Jones said a lot of people were hurting. We heard him talking earlier. He needed a cookie and a participation ribbon because I voted because of the election results, and that African-American women knew something about being talked down to. Okay. All right. I mean, this is the portion from this article I want to take just a second to look at. Also on CNN came this laugher from PBS NewsHour, White House correspondent Laura Bannon Lopez, who said one reason Harris lost is that unlike Trump, she did not have a media ecosystem to help her. What world, what planet are these people living in? The media ecosystem did nothing but help Kamala Harris and Tampon Tim. I mean, it was post after post after post, with the exception of Elon Musk. Now that boy did work. Man, I hope he buys CNN. That's one of the rumors out there. Personally, I would love it if Elon Musk bought YouTube. Yeah, that's not going to happen, though, because Google owns it, right? According to numbers compiled by the Media Research Center, coverage of Harris was 78% positive and only 22% negative, while the numbers for Trump were the reverse, 15% positive and 85% negative talk about a media ecosystem. Those are your numbers, and that's why nobody looks at mainstream media anymore. And they're like, I'm going to go watch this guy. Even the numbers on election night, which for TV is just like, it's like this, a Super Bowl that comes around every 4 years. So many people were on, we're on the Daily Wire. We're going to be on, Steven Crowder, all the guys I follow all had different shows going on. Tim Pool was at the Daily Wire in Tennessee doing his thing. I didn't see much of these folks because I was trying to, just follow mainstream media and see what they had to say. And it was just, it was so weird because I'm like, this is a blowout. And even people on my live stream that night said, hey, don't get ahead of yourself. And I'm like, yeah, but look at the data coming in. This is a blowout. And it was. And I ended up, I tapped out our 6-hour allotment on election day. Got to remember that with our current plan, YouTube only allows us to live stream for 6 hours in one day. The polls were wrong again, and there were none more in error than the Des Moines Register poll. That's the one we talked about with the guy who said, well, if it's in the right direction, this is going to be a blowout. Trump won Iowa for the third time. His margin was 14 points. Pollster J.Ann Setzer, who was described as renowned by the newspaper, said that she would be reviewing her data to determine how she got it so wrong. One hopes that she shares the results with us. Yeah, right? How about this guy? Massachusetts Democrat received swift backlash from own party for transgender comments. This is how disconnected, this is November 11th, this is yesterday. This is how disconnected the Democrat Party is, especially the liberal elites. So this guy comes out and says, you know what, let's just go ahead and listen to it. I've got it teed up here. And I'm going to give you this view so you can watch more of it.
Moulton. He previously ran for president in the 2020 Democratic primary. It's good to welcome you back to the broadcast, and we're going to get going into this. After Trump's victory on Tuesday, Democrats are certainly grappling with the way forward. And after the loss Tuesday, you are one of the lawmakers who've said that Democrats are out of touch with the American people, saying they spend way too much time trying not to offend anyone rather than being brutally honest about the challenges many Americans face. Then as part of that argument, you told the New York Times, quote, I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete. But as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. I know that you have put out a follow-up statement. I do want to give you a chance to explain your comments because you know they have faced backlash. So you've got the floor.
Sure. No, thank you, Alex, very much. And look, I was just speaking authentically as a dad about one of many issues where I think we're just out of touch with the majority of voters. And I stand by my position. You know, maybe I didn't get all the words exactly right, but
No, I think you did. You just said you didn't want your daughters run over by a dude on a sports field. That's pretty reasonable.
Point is that the backlash I've received proves my point that we can't even have these discussions as a party. I mean, the chairman of the Massachusetts Democratic Party wouldn't even return my phone call. And we've got to be able to have these debates. But instead, we have a wing of our party that shames us, that tries to cancel people who even bring up these difficult topics, and frankly, shames voters. This is the same group of people who told us to defund the police, who told us that there wasn't a problem at the southern border, who told us that inflation was transient, whatever that means, and who told us that Biden was just fine. And they're out of touch with voters. If we just listen to voters on all of these issues, they were telling us the truth. So we've got to be willing to have these debates. I'm willing to have my mind changed. In fact, I've had some really good conversations in just the last few days with LGBTQ advocates and others, some of whom agree with me, others who don't, but are willing to engage in a thoughtful discussion rather than just trying to cancel one person or another. But we've got to have these debates now to come up with a new strategy for the party, a winning strategy, so that come January, we can be totally united to defeat the Trump agenda, which we know that Trump is going to attack the rights of minorities in this country, including trans people. He's going to try to take away freedoms from women and others. We've got to be united with a winning strategy to prevent that from happening.
So,
good luck with that. Good luck with that, fine sir. You got nothing. We got the presidency, got the Supreme Court, the House, the Senate, popular vote. I mean, good luck with that. Now, what I would say there is that we're talking about issues like trans rights. I don't want anybody in my life, female, to be in a locker room, to be in a restroom and have some dude who identifies as a woman in there. That's pretty basic. And I think most men realize, all right, we didn't treat women all that well for hundreds and thousands of years. They were kind of second-class citizens. We didn't allow them to vote. So we gave them all these rights, and they're basically equal now. There isn't much that women can't do that men can do, right? I mean, that's fair enough. But I'm a hard no-go because women are physically smaller. And in sports, that becomes wildly apparent. They just develop at a different rate than men. They don't go through puberty. They don't have balls. It's so basic. And yet the far left wants to convince us that, tampon Tim, the boys, they have menstrual cycles as well. And you're like, what world are you living in? And that's what I think America said. No on that whole trans issue thing. No go. Inflation wasn't transitory. We've been feeling that very, very badly. While you're trying to defend the whole abortion thing, that's low on our totem pole of priorities because the vast number of Americans, they're not overly worked up about their ability to get an abortion at any point in time. Now, I personally think that abortions are wrong, and yet I believe women should have the right to make that decision. I think fair is fair. If you're going to, my body, my choice, kind of like the jab. I don't want to get the jab. I don't want to get the jab just because you're telling me to. I don't want to lose my job because I didn't get the jab. It's got to go both ways, right? So fair is fair. But bottom line is, you're going to be able to get an abortion during the Trump administration. It's this nationwide ban on abortion isn't happening. That is just total crap. And the rest of the stuff, we'll have to wait and see. I don't think we're going to see mass deportation the way that Trump talks about it. But you're going to see the border get tightened up. You're going to see those 94 executive orders that Biden brought in. You're going to see parole used the way it should be, which it hasn't been the last 3.5 years. Parole policy. You're also going to see remain in Mexico become a thing, and you're going to see Mexico, which has already tightened down its borders. Meanwhile, we've got a few thousand illegals trying to come into the country, and they will probably get here, and we will probably bring them in. Got another one here. Mark Cuban, Maverick's minority owner and Harris surrogate, takes heat for deleting supportive posts of vice president. You know what he says? You know what this weasel says? This weasel says, "Oh yeah, I've always gone back and deleted tweets for years. Same with 2020 election, 2016 election. Same with other stuff. You can use the Wayback Machine if you really want to see them. So then why are you putting this stuff out there, Marco? Whoa, what are we doing? Oh, good Lord. Now we've got Trump in office." I don't know if you know Jack White of the White Stripes. Well, he had a little lawsuit against Trump for using his 7 Nation Army song. Trump loves to use people's song and not pay him anything, right? We're just going to use this song. Don't really care what you say. And so the White Stripes had a lawsuit against President Trump. All of the lawsuits are miraculously being dismissed now. Yeah, it doesn't look like we have a chance to really win this. So we're just going to take this lawsuit, go home. And a bunch of the other suits against Trump are going the same way too, because people are running for the hills because they're worried. Oh my gosh. How do you think Letitia James in New York City is feeling about now? How about them apples, Letitia James? I mean, You've got gruesome Newsom in New Scum, President Trump would refer to him as, basically saying we're fortifying the fort, the fort against the onslaught that's going to be the Trump. And you're like, you're just virtue signaling. And with Newsom, I strongly believe he will be the 2028 candidate for the Democrats. And it is going to be just an utter you-know-what show because he won't have California cleaned up. It's a monumental task, and he doesn't have the ability, the resources, the personnel to really clean California up the way it needs to be. So all you're going to have to do is literally take some footage of downtown LA, the poop emoji map in San Fran, bipping, all of these things that we talk about, homelessness, drugs, fentanyl overdoses, all of these things on a regular basis that you're not finding in other communities because they haven't had the complete lack of leadership that you find in California. And on that note, you've also had a recall. You've had a bunch of recalls in California. George Gascon lost his re-election. You recalled Sang Tao, the terrible progressive mayor of Oakland. And you've got Alameda County, Pamela Price. She got recalled. I mean, you've got a whole bunch of progressive liberal nonsense that literally just got tossed to the curb, just kicked to the curb in one fell swoop. And the Democrats are going, oh, good Lord. But hey, we don't agree with you that your daughter shouldn't be just run over on the soccer field by a, 6'2", 180-pound tranny. We don't agree with you. That's not our official stance. What is wrong with you people? Like, what kind of mental illness do you have when you think it's okay to have men competing against women? It's just, if you want to have your own league for people who make it believe in their head that they're a sex that they aren't, if you want to have a league for them, I'm sure somebody will sponsor you, right? I mean, do that, but you got to keep the boys playing the boys and the girls playing the girls, because that's how this goes. And then that whole surgery thing, people in prison, I'm feeling like a woman. Why don't you chop it off while you're at it and give me some boobies? And federal taxpayers' dollars will foot the bill on this bad boy. Yeah, hard no-go on that. And the argument from the left, this far left, is that, well, it's federal law. It was the same law that was in place when Trump was in. If Trump overturned every single law that was ridiculous like that, could you imagine the backlash? I mean, you guys think your heads are spinning off now? I need a cookie. If you think your heads are spinning off now, try if Trump just tore into all this, which he's going to tear into some stuff. He's going to tear into some stuff. He's going to spin things around, right? He's going to make some changes. I don't think it's as bad as people think it is. If you're trans, I don't think you need to move to Australia. You know what I mean? It's not going to be like that. You're not going to have the same playbook, though, that you had. We're not going to just stand by and go, oh, yeah, all right, yeah, okay. Susie just got run over by that dude we just talked about that we're calling Julie. I literally, at my Trader Joe's, I had this tall kid and, just so clearly a dude, and his name was something along those lines. And I was like, oh my word, what are we doing here? We are just completely making believe. Here's an article. This is a great example of the fake news and ridiculousness that was out there trying to sabotage Team Trump. Now, you don't have any of this ridiculous stuff thrown out at Kamala Harris because you didn't have to. You literally just had to clip her quotes and run a 1-minute segment on what she said, and that's all you needed to know. It was like Joe Biden, when Joe Biden spoke and he just ran his words together. That was abuse. That was elder abuse of a senior citizen. I'm sure he's going to be fined for another 4 years. And the far left and the left said, well, he's just got a speech impediment. Well, how did that work out for you? How did that go? Team Trump knows the end is near, and they're pissed at their candidate. Donald Trump's own team is disgusted by him, according to a new report. Donald Trump's own staff now sees that the campaign is rotting from within. Well, if that's a campaign rotting from within, what was Kamala Harris's? Yeah. According to the reporting from The Atlantic's Tim Alberta, who has followed the Trump campaign over the past year, many staffers are reflecting on the poor state of Trump's 2024 run and are fed up. I just don't know how much longer I can put up with this. Well, because you were working too hard? Because Trump was outrunning you? There was a rumor that on election night, Trump had been up for 72 straight hours. If that's true, I want what he's on. You know what I mean? Because he seemed fairly coherent. He did that speech. I mean, that's a guy just going to the wall, gets shot in the ear, comes back, does how many interviews at damn near 80 years old? I don't care if you're a Trump boy or not, Trump girl or not, but what he did was just physically impressive. Given his diet of McDonald's and Diet Coke, and he's kind of a machine. I mean, one person on the Trump campaign told Alberta last month that after John Kelly's warning on Trump's love of Hitler and fascism, so that really backfired as well, didn't it? Because what you're saying to the American public is that you're all fascists. You're all racist, sexist, fascists. That's not going to age well, is it? You're not really hearing that story, are you? They can't blame the electorate. They can only blame themselves and a terrible, terrible, not only choice to run Biden to begin with, but then to yank him, give Kamala Harris 107 days, and she was a terrible candidate to begin with. She's a DEI hire that never really prosecuted anybody, and is another reason that California is as in bad a shape as it is. Let's let just people out of jail. It's like the dude in Seattle who did all the stabbings, the 10 stabbings. He's a convicted felon. He's got a rap sheet a mile long. Hey, let's just let him out and we'll see what happens. This is going to be great. I'm not even sure I can ride out this campaign, the staffer added, because you got no ability to stand tall and go, hey, let's do this. Talking with CNN and MSNBC Monday night, Alberta said that some of of those working on the campaign are disillusioned. Because you're working for a winner? Yeah. Or even feel resentment and disgust toward the Republican nominee. This is a legit article that was out there. And by legit, I mean, yeah, there's fatigue and exhaustion. And at times, I think it would be accurate to say a disgust for some of the people that has set in, Alberta told MSNBC. Even among the people who have poured their blood, sweat, and tears into re-electing Trump, there is a feeling that something is off here. Well, you know what's off? It's your internal compass, because that was a campaign that was about to have one of the greatest routs in American political history. So something is off here. Maybe it's you. I'm just saying. As Alberta reported in his Atlantic feature on Saturday, many Trump staffers appeared burnt out because they were going 100 miles an hour for months and even considered resignation in the home stretch of the campaign. Following Joe Biden's resignation, as Trump cozied up with Laura Loomer and Elon Musk and Lewandowski was going rogue, wrote Alberta, morale was plummeting among the rank and file staff. The past 3 months have been the most unpleasant of their careers, he continued. Win or lose, they said, we're done with the chaos of Donald Trump. And even if the nation was not. Well, I guess you're done with, a winning campaign as well. I mean, that's literally what you're saying. Same people who had been excited to reelect Trump just months before, after week of scandal, told Alberta they had a change of heart. What was the scandal? What was the scandal that stuck? Yeah, there was a lot of stuff thrown out there. How about Joe Biden saying, I'm trying to get across the plot? He's talking about, walking across land. Some of those macho guys come up and, you just want to smack them in the ass. You know what I mean? And then they just wouldn't let Joe on election night. Joe Biden, who is our president. He is currently our president. They wouldn't let Joe Biden into the main area where Kamala Harris was. He had to stay at home on election night. And that's our president, because he would have said something like, let's smack him in the ass. I mean, he's disconnected and he doesn't have the ability anymore to do cognizant thoughts on the fly without a teleprompter. And neither does Kamala Harris. You could see her. And yeah. How about, we're almost done with this article, but how about all of the celebrities that came out and endorsed Kamala Harris? I mean, just dozens and dozens of them. Just, we believe Harris is the best candidate, trying to get their fans like Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift had to basically suck the you-know-what and say, she's a Kamala Harris fan anyway, though, right? But she knows damn well when she does that, she alienates a bunch of fans. I did a podcast for the private channel and I showed the Andrew Tate rendition, his absolute meltdown, where he lists off all the celebrities that he says to F off because they're going to leave the country, but they're not, right? You just know those folks aren't going to leave. As of a few weeks ago, people close to him were still pretty bullish on his prospects. Alberta told CNN, I'm not sure that's the case anymore. I think that there is a real fear that the bottom has started to fall out here at the worst possible moment, and that they are closing in about as weak a fashion as you possibly could. And you know what the rest of us did? The rest of us just said, I don't really see that happening. I don't see Kamala Harris coming up with anything of substance. And there's no way if this race is as close as you say it's going to be, I don't know. I mean, it just didn't feel like that, right? It didn't feel like that. I predicted on election night that I thought Kamala Harris would win by a hair because I didn't think they'd give it to Trump. But then I also said, hey, in my wild dreams, I want to see Trump absolutely steamroll this, what. And that's what happened. And it was great. And yeah. So, and the 6 hour limit, that's what happened. That's why my stream got cut off. Cause I went too long. I didn't know when to stop. But to be honest, what I did is I went home and I immediately turned on, the exact same channels that I was watching with you guys. And I was watching that. And then I watched till about 2:00 in the morning. And because we're East Coast or West Coast time, I would have had to stay up, I think, an extra hour and a half. And I would have got, 2:00, 5 o'clock. I think it was 5:30 is when they officially made a bunch of the calls for Trump. So there was none of this long drawn out counting of the ballots, was there? It was so boom, definitive. And moving forward. So what happens moving forward? Does all this ridiculous identity politics and stuff? I mean, we've already seen DEI go away, right? On a corporate level, every major company that Robbie Starbuck looks sideways at, hey, what do you got going on in your DEI program? Do we need to take a look at it? He's the guy that basically exposes all the ridiculousness on Twitter, X. And gets these big companies to just basically say, all right, we don't want to get Bud Lighted. We'll take our policy down. We'll get rid of our whole program. Are you going to see that with a bunch of stuff on the left? I mean, the main reason that, Democrats lost is because they didn't listen to the American public, and they went hard on issues that the American public just basically says, nah, that's not our thing. We don't care about that. We need to pay bills. We need to buy groceries. We need to buy gasoline. We got to buy, we got to pay for housing. I mean, all this stuff that has just become ridiculously expensive. And yet, we're worked up about trans rights and abortion rights, which are important, but they're not the main priority. And that's where the Democrats, I think, just went right over their head. And that's why we're doing this podcast today, because it's been such an epic meltdown. I've got a bunch more podcasts coming. How about the FEMA official in Florida that said, if you have a Trump sign out in front of your house, we're not going to help you. And then some employee is like, didn't inspect that house, Trump sign in front, per supervisor. And we've got stuff like that coming out. So stay tuned. Make sure that you're subscribed, do all that good stuff. Check out reasonabletv.com. I've got a bunch of extra content going on there as per usual. But right now, a bunch more, because there's a lot to cover. Thanks for being here on this live stream. Much appreciated. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.